गुरवे नमः। ओम विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामी नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशधारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौरभक्तवृंद हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे. Chapter 21. The Mayavadi philosophers are converted. In this way, Lord Chaitanya condemned attempts at direct and indirect interpretation of the Vedanta Sutra, and all the sannyasis present were struck with wonder by his explanation. After hearing the direct interpretation, one of the sannyasis immediately declared, O Sripad Chaitanya, whatever you have explained in your condemnation of the indirect interpretation of Omkar is not at all a useless argument. Still, only a fortunate person can accept your interpretation as the right one. Actually, every one of us now knows that the interpretations given by Shankara are all artificial and imaginary, but because we belong to his sect, we took it for granted that his interpretation was the right one. We shall be very glad to hear you further explain the Vedanta Sutra by direct interpretation. Being so requested, Lord Chaitanya explained each and every aphorism of the Vedanta Sutra according to the direct interpretation. He began by explaining the word Brahma, indicating that means the highest, the supreme personality of Godhead. The word Brahma indicates that the greatest is full with six opulences. In other words, the supreme personality of Godhead is the reservoir of all wealth, all fame, all strength, all beauty, all knowledge, and all renunciation. While Lord Krishna was present personally on the earth, he exhibited these six opulences in full. No one was richer than Lord Krishna. No one was more learned than Krishna. No one was more beautiful than Krishna. No one was stronger than Krishna. No one was famous than Krishna. More famous than Krishna. No one was more renounced than Krishna. Therefore, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the Supreme Brahma. This is confirmed by Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita, Param Brahma Param Dhama. You are the Supreme Brahma, the ultimate, the Supreme Abode. Therefore, Brahma indicates the greatest, and the greatest is the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna. He is the shelter of the Absolute Truth, Paratattva, because he is Param Brahma. There is nothing material in his opulences of wealth, fame, strength, beauty, knowledge, and renunciation. All the Vedic verses, hymns indicate that everything about Krishna is spiritual and transcendental. Wherever the word Brahma appears in the Vedas, it should be understood that Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is indicated. An intelligent person at once replaces the word Brahma with the name Krishna. Shivani Mataji, you can read.
The Supreme Personality of Godhead is transcendental to the material modes of nature, but he is fully qualified with transcendental attributes. To attempt the Supreme as impersonal is to deny the full manifestation of his spiritual energies, since the Supreme Brahman, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is full with all varieties of spiritual energy. One who simply accepts the impersonal exhibition of spiritual energy does not accept the absolute truth in full. To accept the Supreme in full is to accept spiritual vari- varietedness with varietedness, which is transcendental to the material modes of nature. By failing to accept the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the impersonalities are left with an incomplete conception of Brahman. The approved method for understanding the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna is the path of devotional service, and this is confirmed in every Vedic scriptures. The devotional service of the Lord beings with hearing about Him. There are 9 different methods of devotional service, of which hearing is the chief. Hearing, chanting, remembering, worshipping, all these are used in the process of attaining the highest perfection, understanding the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This process by which the Supreme Personality of Godhead is understood is known as Abhidhyaya, practice of devotional service within conditioned life.
In the practice, it is experienced that one who takes to Krishna consciousness does not like to deviate to any other consciousness. Krishna consciousness is the development of love for Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and this is the fifth and highest interest of the human being. When one takes to the process of transcendental devotional service leading to love of Godhead, he relishes his relationship with Krishna directly, and from this reciprocation and from this reciprocation of relishing transcendental dealings with Krishna, Krishna gradually becomes a personal associate of the devotee. Then the devotee eternally enjoys blissful life. Therefore, the purpose of Vedanta Sutra is to re-establish the living entity's lost relationship with the Supreme Lord, to describe the execution of devotional service, and to enable one to ultimately achieve the highest goal of life, love of Godhead. The Vedanta Sutra describes these three principles of transcendental life and nothing more. After Lord Chaitanya explained the Vedanta Sutra by directly interpreting the aphorism, the chief disciple of Prakashananda Saraswati stood up in the assembly and began to praise Lord Chaitanya as the Supreme Personality of Godhead Narayan. The chief disciple not only very much appreciated the explanation of the Vedanta Sutra by Lord Chaitanya, but he publicly stated, the direct explanation of the Upanishads and Vedanta Sutra is so pleasing that we forget ourselves and also forget that we belong to the Mayavadi sect. We must admit that Shankaracharya's explanations of the Upanishads and Vedanta Sutra are all imaginary. We may sometimes accept such imaginary explanations for the sake of sectarian creeds, but actually such explanations do not satisfy us. It is not that one becomes free from material entanglement simply by accepting the order of sannyas. If we actually understand the explanations given by Lord Chaitanya, we will be helped. Indeed, Sri Krishna Chaitanya's explanation of the verse beginning Hare Nam, Hare Nam Eva Kevalam is pleasing to all of us.
There is no alternative to devotional service for one who wants to attain liberation from the material pleasures, especially in this age. One can achieve the highest liberation simply by chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Rama, Hare Hare. In Srimad Bhagavatam, it is stated that when a person abandons the path of devotional service and simply labors for knowledge, his only profit is that trouble the text to understand the difference between matter and spirit. His efforts are like the useless labor one undergoes trying to get grains from empty hugs. Similarly, Srimad Bhagavatam stated that a person who gives up the transcendental loving service of the Supreme Lord and superficially considers himself liberated never attains actual liberation, although with great labors, austerity, and penance, he may be elevated to the liberated platform. For want of shelter at the lotus feet of the spiritual Lord, he falls down again into material contamination. The Supreme Brahman cannot be accepted as impersonal, for if it is, then the six opulence belonging to the Supreme Personality of Godhead cannot be attributed to Brahman. All the Vedas and Puranas affirm that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is full of spiritual energies, but foolish people do not accept this, and therefore they deride his activities. They ministrate the transcendental body of Krishna to be a creation of material nature, and this is considered to be the greatest offense and greatest sin. One should simply accept the words of Lord Chaitanya that he spoke in this assembly.
The individual personality of the Supreme Absolute Truth is explained in the Srimad Bhagavatam. O Supreme Lord, the transcendental form which I am seeing is the embodiment of transcendental pleasure. It is eternal and devoid of the contamination of the material modes. It is the greatest manifestation of the Absolute Truth. It is full of effulgence. O soul of everyone, you are the creator of this cosmic manifestation with all this with all its material elements. I surrender unto you in your transcendental form. O Krishna, O most auspicious one in the universe, you advent yourself in your original personal form in order to be worshipped by us, and we perceive you either by meditation or by direct worship. Foolish people contaminated by the material nature do not give much importance to your transcendental form, and consequently they glide down to hell. This is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita. However, the Supreme Lord Chaitanya has provided the master and the Lord of all creation. That is Krishna, form that I am the provider, the master, and the Lord of all creation. That such foolish people and demonic persons go to the hellish planet. It is stated later in the Bhagavad Gita.
I place those who are envious for me and my devotees into the most degraded species of life. Those situated such a demonic soul have no chance of understanding the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The doctrine of byproducts Parinam Veda is asserted from the very beginning of the Vedanta Sutra, but Sankaracharya has superficially tried to hide it and establish the doctrine of illusory transformation of state Vivarta Veda. He also has the audacity to say that Vedas is mistaken. All Vedic literatures, including the Puranas, confirm that the Supreme Lord is the center of all spiritual energy and variegatedness. The Mayavadi philosophers proved up and incompetent cannot understand variegatedness in spiritual energy. They constantly falsely believed that spiritual variegatedness is not different than material variegatedness. Delucted by this false belief, the Mayavadi derived the pastime of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Such a foolish person, unable to understand the spiritual activities of the Supreme Lord, consider Krishna a product of this material nature. This is the greatest offense any human being can commit. Lord Chaitanya has conceivably established that Krishna is Sachidanand Vigraha, the form of eternity, knowledge, and bliss, and that he is always engaged in his transcendental pastimes, in which there is all spiritual varietiness.
Chart, will you read?
In this way, the student of Prakashananda summarized the explanation of Lord Chaitanya, and then he conclude, we have given up the actual path of spiritual realization. We simply engage in non-nonsensical talk. Mayavadi philosophers who are seriously about attending benedictions should engage in the devotional service of Krishna, but instead they take pleasure in a useless argument only. We hereby admit that the explanation of Sankaracharya hides the actual import of Vedic literature. Only the explanation given by Chaitanya is acceptable. All other interpretations are useless.
After thus explaining his position, the chief student of Prakashananda Saraswati began to chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. When Prakashananda Saraswati saw this, he too admitted the fault of Shankaracharya and said, Because Shankaracharya wanted to establish the doctrine of monism, he had no alternative but to interpret the Vedanta Sutra in a different way. Once one accepts the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the doctrine of monism cannot be established. Therefore, my mundane scholarship, therefore, by mundane scholarship, Shankaracharya has tried to obscure the actual meaning of the Vedanta Sutra. Not only has Shankaracharya done this, but all authors who attempt to But all authors who attempt to give their own views must misinterpret the Vedanta Sutra. Thus it is Lord Chaitanya who has given the direct meaning of the Vedanta Sutra. No Vedic scripture should be used for indirect speculation. In addition to Shankaracharya, other materialistic philosophers like the atheist Kapil, Gautam, Ashtavakra, and Patanjali have put forward philosophical speculations in various ways. Indeed, the philosopher Jaimini and his followers, who are all more or less logicians, have abandoned the real meaning of the Vedanta, Veda's devotional service, and try to establish the absolute truth is subordinate to the material world. It is their opinion that if there is God, He will be pleased with us, give us, give us all desired result if we simply perform our materialistic activities nicely. Similarly, the atheist Kapil tried to establish that it is not God who created the material world, but rather a combination of material elements. Gautam and Ganad have also given stress to material elements, trying to establish that atomic energy is the origin of creation. Impersonalist monists like Ashtavakra have tried to establish the impersonal effulgence Brahma Jyoti as the supreme, and Patanjali, one of the greatest authorities on the yoga system, has tried to conceive of an imaginary form of God.
In summary, it should be understood that all these materialistic philosophers have tried to avoid the Supreme Personality of Godhead by putting forward their own mentally concocted philosophies. But Vyasadeva, the great sage and incarnation of Godhead, has thoroughly studied all these philosophical speculation and in answer has compiled the Vedanta Sutra, which described the relationship of everything with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the accumulation of devotional service, and the ultimate achievement, love of Godhead. The Vedanta Sutra begins with the aphorism ज्ञान ज्ञानमद आशया yatha, which Vyasadeva explained in the first verse of Srimad Bhagavatam, those establishing from the very beginning that the supreme source of everything is a cognizant transcendental person. The impersonalist tries to explain that the supreme Lord's impersonal effulsion, the Brahma Jyoti, is beyond the material modes of nature, but at the same time, he tries to establish that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is contaminated by the modes of material nature. In truth, the Vedanta Sutra establishing not only that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is transcendental to the material modes of nature, but also that he can innumerable transcendental qualities and energies. All these various speculative philosophers are one in denying the existence of the Supreme Lord Vishnu, and they are very enthusiastic to put forward their own theories and be recognized by the people. Unfortunate person become enamored of these atheistic philosophers, and those can never understand the real nature of the absolute truth. It is far better to follow in the footsteps of great soul or Mahajans. According to Srimad Bhagavatam, there are 12 Mahajan. First, Brahma, Lord Shiva, Narada, Vishwata, Manu, Kapila, not the atheist but the original Kapila, the Kumaras, Prahlada, Bhishma, um, Janak, Bali, Sukadeva Goswami, and Yamraja. According to the Mahabharata, there is no point is arguing about the absolute truth because there are so many different Vedic literature and philosophers understanding that no one philosophers can agree with another, since every one is trying to present his own point of view and reject others. It is very difficult to understand the prime necessity of life explained by religious principles. Therefore, it is better to follow in the footsteps of Mahajan's great souls. They one can achieve the desired success. Lord Chaitanya's teachings are just like nectar, and they hold whatever you need. The best way is to take to the path of and follow it.
Hare Krishna. Okay, so we'll continue this chapter tomorrow. Shri Guru Vandana. Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhagadi Satma Pandumoi Savadhana Mate Jahara Prasade Bhai He Bhavaturiya Jai Krishna Prapti Hoi Jaha Hoi Te Gurumukh Padma Vakya Jidati Koriya Kya Arana Kori Ho Mani Asha Shri Guru Charane Rati Aise Uttama Gati Se Prasade Pure Sarva Asha चक्षुदान दिलोदय धन्य धन्य प्रभु से दिव्य ज्ञान के दे प्रकाशितो प्रेमा भक्ति जहाँ है अविद्या विनाश जाते तेरे गाय जहाँ चरी तो श्री गुरु करुणा सिंधु अदम जाना रावतु लोकनाथ के रजीवना आहा प्रभु करो दया देव मोरे पद छाया हे तुझा सुचुक्ति भुवन तिला प्रभु भास्वती पवन जया गुरुदेवा 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 जय गुरुदेवा जय गुरु प्रभुपाद 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 जय जय प्रभुपाद जय गौर हरि बोल हरि बोल हरि बोल जय गौर हरि बोल. The lotus feet of our spiritual master are the abode of pure devotional service. I bow down to his lotus feet with great care, with great awe and reverence. My of my emanating from his mouth. Attachment to his lotus feet is the perfection that fulfills all desires. He opens my darkened eyes and fills my heart with transcendental knowledge. He is my Lord, birth after birth. From him, ecstatic prema emanates. By him, ignorance is destroyed. With the Vedic scriptures sing of his character. Our spiritual master is the ocean of mercy, the friend of the poor, and the Lord and master of the devotees. O Master, be merciful unto me. Give me the shade of your lotus feet. Your fame is spread all over the three worlds. We take shelter of your lotus feet. You are the friend of the most fallen. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. All glories to Srila Gurudev. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Thank you so much, Madhu.